everybody. Welcome to today's episode of CCIR. I'm Nell, and today we're chatting to Dhruv from India, who, during his time with CCIR, worked on a project titled The Illusion of Bilateralism, a Structural Marxist Interpretation of the Bracero Program. And he worked with Dr. Dana Bablek. So, welcome, Dhruv. It's a pleasure to talk to you today. Please, could you begin by explaining what your project means?
Yeah, of course. So my paper explores the Bracero program, which was a temporary, guest worker program for Mexican workers to work in the United States from 1942 to 1964. And what I explore in my paper is really the exploitation of these workers by the U.S., United States employers. But, the main point of my thesis is that this is more of a structural issue that was, rooted in the United States' lax enforcement of for worker protections and, the neglect of its responsibilities that were, stipulated in the initial Bracero agreement. So that's kind of what I focus on in my paper. And for my paper, as you mentioned in the title, Structural Marxism, I use a theoretical framework. And basically from that theoretical framework, which was pioneered by this guy named Louis Althusser, I take three of his tenets related to exploitation called overdetermination, ideology, and anti-humanism. So to just give a rundown on these three topics, overdetermination kind of pertains to how, you have multiple causes that can lead to one effect. So it's not just one cause and one effect. It's multiple different things working all at once, not just a single chain reaction. So, you can see one thing on the outside, but in reality, it's very nuanced and layered. And how that kind of relates to my paper and to the exploitation of Braceros is just the multiple interest groups that were involved in creating the program. I focus on three: the United States government, Mexico's government, and the Braceros themselves, as well as the United States employers, actually four. And kind of how, the United States empowered the employers by, backing their interests, neglecting their responsibilities, and, how Mexico kind of lost bargaining power throughout the program and how that allowed Braceros to be abused and exploited. The next topic I said was ideology, which, as it means in plain English, is just how you perceive things around you. And the ideology I focused on for this paper was racism. And, Louis Althusser, in addition to ideology, he lays out this idea of these structures called ideological state apparatuses, which are basically these institutions which perpetuate ideologies. So not only did I focus on kind of how Braceros were treated with racialized hostility, but also how there were these different institutions that perpetuated this hostility, whether it was schools, the school curriculum, the media, the news, the government itself, and, even the church. So how all these institutions kind of came together to legitimize the dehumanization of Braceros. And the last topic, I was gonna bring up was anti-humanism, which is kind of looking at how, the masses make history, not man, and how it kind of provides an overarching outlook on everything and like how everything is run by structures and not just by individuals. So with anti-humanism, I kind of just focused on, how there was a disparity in between the protections that were stipulated in the Bracero labor agreement and how they were actually played out, how they were abided with by the U.S. employers, as well as how, Mexico thought it would be able to economically benefit from the program, but instead it actually became economically dependent and subordinate to the US in many ways. So I'm looking at those two kind of contradictions as, a microcosm of anti-humanism. So those were the kind of three tenets I took from, Louis Althusser's theory of structural Marxism and kind of used the Bracero program as a lens to that theoretical framework. So that's kind of the main premise of my paper.
That is so fascinating. Thank you. And such a well articulated explanation. Um, Sounds like such an incredibly sort of relevant project. I wonder, because obviously you've applied this incredibly theoretical framework, what do you feel like the benefits of this type of research and applying that kind of academic approach to these kinds of topics? What do you feel the benefits are of that? And also, how has CCIR, the program, how has it aided you with that, do you think?
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to take the structuralist approach because I don't think you can just take something at face value. Because, even in today's debates about migration and how it should be tackled, it's very easy to just take one side or the other, but it's much harder to, look at the history, look at the how and why, and then come up with an answer from that. So I kind of took the structuralist approach to see how, multiple factors have kind of led to the single effect. So that was the main reason I wanted to do it. And then I think CCIR has really helped me do it because I only actually became introduced to the topic during my introductory lessons with my mentor, Dr. Brablick. It was, I think, maybe during the fourth or fifth lesson where we were talking about more theoretical stuff. And, in the first few lessons, we were mainly talking about like migration and kind of how that happens. But in the, fourth and fifth, we focused on the theory, and she proposed to me a bunch of different theoretical frameworks from a bunch of different, pioneers in the field of sociology. And one that really stuck out to me that I thought would be really relevant in today's, day, was structural Marxism. And I kind of took that theoretical framework, found a topic that I thought was not only relevant to today, but was relevant in the, many years ago. And I kind of came up with a research question that combined the theoretical framework and um, the historical topic, and I kind of proposed it to her, and that's how we actually started the research process. So I don't think I would have gone as in depth as I did without the aid she gave me in the beginning, and of course throughout the rest of the process.
Yeah, fantastic. So how did you become interested in this? Like what was your kind of journey to working with Dr. Brablick? If this was something that you only knew specifically you wanted to look at whilst you'd already started working with her, what were the steps before that to getting there and to deciding you wanted to do research?
Well, so I think I was always interested in, immigration, as
Mm.
an immigrant myself who moved here, moved to the US many, many years ago. I know what it's like to have to assimilate into a new environment with people of, different backgrounds. And also as just like a resident of the United States by itself. I get to hear about these things on the news all the time and, during community gatherings in my school, which kind of also connects to my background in research as I've actually done quite a few research projects in my school every year since fifth grade. We've had to do um, like a few month long research project. Like every year, the research project gets longer and the length of the paper gets longer. So I've been doing a paper every year for the past 6 years now. Um, but I think what kind of set CCIR apart from that was, with my school papers, we always kind of had to fit into that straitjacket of following a specific structure, choosing from a set list of topics and, like following a set procedure for how to write the paper. But with CCIR, I found I had a lot more freedom with what I wanted to write about, the topic, how I wanted to approach note taking and like actually getting my evidence and how to actually put that into action with writing my paper. Like I'd never experimented with a theoretical framework before that stage. So it was a very unique and novel experience for me personally because I'd always had to fit into that straitjacket of just one size fits all for research. So I think that's what I really enjoyed about CCIR, and that's what made the process so unique for me.
Fantastic. That's really great to hear. So tell us a little bit more about that then, about your relationship with Dr. Brablick and maybe how you found navigating that freedom and how you juggled that alongside school. Yeah, tell us more about your kind of relationships during the program and the practicalities as well of managing it throughout life.
Yeah, so initially I actually hadn't signed up for the one-on-one research mentorship. I'd actually signed up for the Future Scholar program, but CCIR actually sent me an email saying that Dr. Bravlek has an opening and that it would cover these topics. And I was actually very intrigued because even though I'd initially tried to go for the Future Scholar program, um, I found that this opening could be potentially interesting and very relevant to the current day. So I decided to take it. And I think one of the reasons it worked out so well was because of Dr. Bravlik, right? The guidance she gave me in the beginning and with just the introductory sessions, and of course, during the writing process that we spent the last seven or so sessions on. And I think also her flexibility was extremely impactful for me because I had a very busy schedule with sports, schoolwork, other extracurriculars. Um, so like at some certain points in time, I wasn't able to meet able to meet bi-weekly with her. And she was okay with that. She was fine with setting up meetings during the week, during, other weekends, just to answer my questions if I had any and to help me, especially during periods when I was stuck. So I think the practicality of it very much depends on, how much time you're willing to give up and how much you're willing to dedicate to it, but also your mentor's willingness to do, as I'm sure many mentors are going to be willing to help their students excel in this process. Because I found she was as passionate about the topic as I was. She was always willing to help me find sources if I needed help, help me with framing the theoretical part of my paper, streamlining it so that it's understandable for a reader looking in from the outside. So she helped me with all of those parts. And I don't think my paper would have been as good as it would have been without her, once again, to reiterate.
Yeah, wonderful. It's really great to hear that you had a good relationship. So what do you feel like you've gained from this experience? Because it does sound really enriching and it sounds like an incredibly educational time. What do you feel like you're going to take forwards, and perhaps even in terms of how has this inspired you academically going forwards?
I think I'll definitely take away, all the research skills I garnered through this program, whether it be using a theoretical framework, having done that for the first time, I kind of learned how to employ that and how to do it well. The note-taking process, especially since this was a longer paper, the longest paper I've personally ever done, how to take notes for a longer, more academic-oriented paper, and, also how to be more creative, how to, think outside of the box and, work more independently of the plan that someone might have given you. And I think that'll definitely apply later in life when I want to do something on my own, which maybe other people want to do something else, and how I'd pursue that, even if it's in like a completely different field. Maybe if it's not researcher, it's some different field. I still have, gained skills with regard to how to do something independently that's different and do it in a way that's actually successful. So I think those are my main takeaways from the program. And overall, it's just a great experience for me. I definitely recommend it to someone who wants to, get involved in research. Even if they already have a decent amount of research experience, like me from school, I think it's a very unique experience that you won't get anywhere else. And I think it's a great introduction, to, academic research you do later in college, which I think I'm definitely going to use the skills I gained during this program, during essays or papers I read in college, like, or a dissertation or whatever. So yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. I'm pleased to hear that you recommend it. Could you tell us a little bit about your application process then, and what that was like, and if you have any advice specifically for that part of the process?
Yeah, so I think the key to having a good application is for it to be very much oriented to you and not what you think will be good. It has to be very personal. Like with all kinds of applications, especially this one, the questions were very much focused on what are your interests, what are you seeking to get out of the program? And I think that's going to differ from person to person. So having a very personalized application, which talks about your strengths, your weaknesses, your interests, your background, I think that's going to be a much stronger application and, stand out much more than one that, is very often replicated and is more so cliche with more cliche ideas in it. So you want to be, you know, very much true to yourself and true to who you are in your application, and also making sure that, you're providing the relevant details, of course. You're showing your strengths and showing your weaknesses, but mainly focusing on your strengths and, kind of showing CCIR that you'd be able to produce something that would be of value and provide a good return on investment for them. Even if you don't have much experience, show that you'd be dedicated to the task at hand and that you'd actually be able to produce a good end product.
Excellent advice. It sounds very similar. Every time I listen to students talk about the application process to CCIR, it sounds very similar to the process to actually getting into university. So I think it's a really great practice for that as well. Okay, so following on from that, any top tips you have, just in general, for students who are thinking about doing the program, and anything maybe that you wish you'd known beforehand, that'd be great.
I definitely say go for it. If you're doubting whether to apply or not, I definitely say go for it. It's going to be a unique experience, a once in a lifetime experience. for someone, especially if you haven't done a lot of research. But as a high schooler, to be doing such high level research that can have leave such an impact, it's really a great thing to do. Um, and yeah, that's what I'd want to leave for someone who watches this podcast, that they should definitely do this program, and it would definitely be good for them in the future. And yeah,
Yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Ruth. It's been really great talking to you. If there's nothing else you'd like to add, then I think we can wrap up. But thank you so much, and it's been really interesting listening to you talk about your project.
yeah, thank you.